How do I play Center Stage? In Center Stage, there are 3 core robot actions: collecting and placing pixels, suspending from the rigging, and launching drones. Some notes about this year's game: it's not a shooting challenge, it's not a terrain challenge, there is a bit of a height challenge involved, but we'll get to that later. First, we're going to talk about pixels. Pixels are 1/2 inch thick, 3 inches from face to face, and have a hexagonal hole in the center that can fit a 1-inch pipe. Pixels can be collected from the wings, or human player loading stations, or from stacks that are pre-placed on the field at the beginning of the match, both of which are opposite the backdrops on the other side of the field. Note that when human players put pixels into the wings or the human player loading stations, the pixels can be in any orientation you want. You can put them against the wall, you can put them up vertically. Any way you want your robot to interact with the pixel, you can set up in advance. This could make picking up the pixel a lot easier for you or your robot. You can't launch or propel pixels across the field, and you can only hold 2 at a time. When placing a pixel, you're placing it on the backdrop, which is positioned at an angle, making it a little bit more challenging to actually place these game pieces to score. Don't worry, if you drop one of these game pieces while trying to score, it can still land in the backstage, which is an additional scoring zone, where game pieces don't have to be placed on that angle. If you drop a pixel from the top of the backdrop towards the bottom, it has a tendency to sort of bounce around. These are pretty slidey game pieces. They'll slide around on the backdrop if you drop them from high up, but if you place it really close to where you want to, you can get some pretty precision placement. Pixels can earn scoring bonuses called the mosaic and set bonuses. A mosaic bonus is achieved when 3 pixels of the same color, or 3 pixels of each color, are touching each other on the backdrop. Don't underestimate the challenge of getting a mosaic bonus. The mosaic bonus only counts if 3 colors of pixels that aren't white are all touching each other. If only 2 are touching each other, or if they're separated by an air gap and aren't touching, that would take away what you would think would be a mosaic bonus. So make sure that when you place a mosaic bonus, you're placing it very specifically and very clearly. The set bonus is assigned when a pixel crosses one of the 3 set lines on the backdrop. You may have already noticed there's a humongous structure in the middle of the field this year called the Truss. The Truss has 2 align-specific sides and 1 stage door in the center. You will have to navigate through the Truss to deliver your pixels from the collection zones to the scoring zones. There are 3 main ways to get through the Truss. The first way is to travel under the height-limiting bars. These bars are set at 14 inches from the ground, which means the robot has to be 14 inches to pass underneath them. That 14-inch height limiter bar is really important. You want to think about it a lot when you're designing your robot, and may drive a lot of your design choices around how you package and structure your overall machine. It's an important way to be able to get through the truss as quickly as possible. The second and probably most difficult way to pass through the truss is to take this sort of S-path through all the A-frames from one side to the other without going under any of the height limiter bars. The third way to pass through the truss is through the stage door. In one direction, you can simply push to open and pass through, but in the other direction, you may have to have a different mechanism in your robot to lift the stage door up so you can pass through. The stage door has a whole lot of rules surrounding access and how you can get through it in conjunction with your alliance partners and opponents. You may want to consult these rules before you decide how you want to interact with that stage door. Also note that the stage door, when fully closed, is at 12 inches tall, a little bit lower than the height limiter bars. So you can, if you so choose, design your robot to pass completely underneath the stage door. Don't underestimate the potential challenge of the stage door. Opening it from the direction in which it doesn't naturally open is actually a pretty difficult challenge, since you have to put your robot underneath as you're passing through it. This mechanism isn't exactly just an arm. It could involve a pretty complicated linkage to get it to work. Last year's game, Power Play, was a lot about maneuverability, about fitting around the different code nodes. This year's game still has that challenge in getting through the truss, but it's even more important to be fast this year, since your sprint distance from where you're collecting a game piece to scoring it, being completely diagonal, essentially the longest distance you can have on an FTC field, is going to be your cycle every single time. It's also important to be able to pick up 2 game pieces, because that essentially halves your cycle time. If you can collect 2 and score 2 at either end, you're getting twice as many cycles as you would only collecting 1. At the end of the match, robots can hang from the rigging, or the red and blue pipes on either side of the truss, to score additional points. Robots are worth additional points if they are lifted only by those pipes into the air at the end of the match. When thinking about how you want to climb from the rigging, consider what other sources of linear or rotational motion you have on your robot. For instance, if your scoring mechanism can double as your climber, that could save you a whole lot of work. The final primary way to score in center stage is by launching your drone out of the field. Drones are formed with an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and colored to match your alliance. To score a drone, the drone must first pass over the truss or stage door. Note that it's not specified that you must start your drone on one side and get to the other side, only that it must pass over that structure. There are 3 white lines extending the width of the field outside one edge of the field opposite the backdrops. This is where the drone is scored. Drones further away from the field score fewer points than drones scored closest to the field. This may incentivize your team to develop a drone or drone launching method that gets you a high arc up and down right over the field wall. And that's how you play center stage.